Are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you want to gain back control of that? Do you want to right the ship? Today we're talking about the top 3 challenges I hear on a very consistent basis from individuals. The first is, I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in the day. The second, I'm so busy. There's so much going on. And the third, I'm feeling burnt out. I don't have the energy I used to have. I feel like I'm burning the wick at both ends. Sound familiar? Have you used any of those phrases? Today we're going to break those down and tackle them one by one so that you have some good, actionable content that you could start executing on. We believe here throwing so much information at you like you're drinking from a fire hose so that you can pick out what works for you. All of this isn't going to work for you. Pick out the things that work for you. Let's get to it. Not enough time. This is the number 1 challenge I hear all the time. I hear this dozens of times a week. Let's break that down because I used to say the same thing. And then I learned a couple of techniques. This is the first technique. I walked into my friend's house and I said, "Your house is so neat. How do you keep it so neat?" He said, "I keep it neat because I'm lazy." I'm like, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean you're lazy? This takes a lot of work to make your house this neat. And he said, "No, when I use something, I put it back where it belongs. Or when I'm walking through the house, if something is laying around, I will pick it up, bring it with me, and put it where it belongs." And I do that because when the weekend comes, I want that time off from work that I'm spending at home. I don't want to spend it cleaning the house. I want to spend it doing what I want to do. So I want to alleviate the pressure of me having to clean the house. And the way I do that is when I use something, it goes right back in its place. This resonated with me because in the fire department, it was the same way. In the fire department, everything had its place. And it had its place because could you imagine being on the fire ground or being in a car accident and having to look for a tool? Oh, I don't know where the tool went. I don't know if it's in compartment 1 or compartment 7. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if we pull up to a house fire and we have to look for where the 1 3/4 hose line is? Like, it doesn't make sense. So implementing that everything has its place. When I come home, keys were my big one. I would just take the keys and just throw them on the side. And then I'd run around the house, where did I put the keys? Having a set place for your keys. This way, every time you know you're going out to the car, the keys are hung on the door, hung on the hook, laid on the tray, wherever that may be. My wallet was another one. I could never find my wallet. Same thing. Now the wallet has a place in the nightstand. So having a place for those things that you're using over and over and over and over and over again. Knowing exactly where they are. Putting those things back where they belong. When you read a book, the book stays on, for me, it goes on my nightstand or on my desk. When I'm finished reading that, it goes back on the bookshelf. Whatever that may be for you, start designating spots for things. Think about it this way. In your kitchen, you know where your mugs are, where your glasses are, where your plates are, where the dishes are, where the silverware is. But when you first move into the house, you have to spend time. Where did I put the cups? Or when you come into my house, you're not going to know. You have to spend time looking for it. So having assigned spots for things is pretty important. Illusion of time. Time is an illusion. And that's really, when I heard that, I was a little perplexed by it. What do you mean time's an illusion? Well, when the pressure comes, all of a sudden you miraculously find the time. It's a prioritization thing. When that deadline is looming, you find the time to get the work done. One of the techniques that I use is I make that deadline earlier than what it is. I used to do this in the fire department all the time. In the fire department, We would start work at 1800 was what time the shift started, 6 p.m. We would get to work at 1700 or 5 p.m. So in my mind, I knew I had to be at work at 5 p.m. I was never late. 15 years, I was never late. Why was I never late? Because I had to be at work an hour before the tour actually started. Now, did I have to be? No, I didn't have to be. But in my mind, I did that, and I was never late. And what that afforded me was, I broke down once, my car overheated. And I was able to limp that car to the firehouse, and I still made it on time, right? I still made it by 1800. I wasn't there at the normal 1700, but it didn't matter because I didn't have to be there till 1800. So I had that fudge factor that I could lean on. Flat tires, dead batteries, alternators going, overheating, traffic, whatever it may be. So you build that in. Same thing with big projects. If we had big projects due, my deadline would always be a week or two before. In the preschool, graduation, right? Preschool graduation, very big deal. We're ready to roll a week before the actual day of graduation. Why? Because if anything goes wrong, we have that week to play with. If something breaks and we have to order something, we still have time to have it shipped in. It actually happened. We lost a whole bunch of thumb drives. We record videos, put them on thumb drives, and give those to the graduates. Those thumb drives, we didn't have enough, and we thought we did. But when we were assembling the bags and making the recordings, we realized we didn't. But we still had a whole week to get those thumb drives and make the copies. So the illusion, time's an illusion, and when the pressure comes, the time appears. Start creating your own pressure. Sounds counterintuitive because we're talking about reducing overwhelm, but if we increase the deadline, the pressure will be reduced also. Let me ask you this. Here's a riddle for you. What does Bill Gates, Donald Trump, and yourself all have in common? Yeah. Yep. I know some of you don't want to admit that you have things in common with Donald Trump, but there is something you do have in common with him. What is it? Cue the Jeopardy music. You all have 168 hours in your day. So how is it that Gates and Trump can do so much and we sit here and we feel overwhelmed? Let's break that week down. We have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. That's 168 hours in a week. 56 hours to sleep, 40 hours to work, 35 hours to do all the incidental things, the shopping, the commuting back and forth to work, laundry, taking a shower, all of that stuff. That leaves us with roughly 37 hours of discretionary time. How are you spending that discretionary time? When I read that, it kind of hit me like a gut punch. Like, whoa, how am I spending those 37 hours? Then I read additional research that tied into this. And that research said that we spend roughly, on average, 3 hours a day on television and 2 hours a day on social media. That's 5 hours a day, 35 hours a week. Hold on a second. 35 hours a week on television and social media, and we have 37 discretionary hours. Wonder why I'm not getting anything done. So I started looking at ways to lessen the amount of time I'm spending in front of the boob tube, just melting my brain, and on social media. So my social media tactic, and I'm not perfect here, guys. It's going to sound like I'm perfect, but I'm not. I spend way too much time on social media. But when I find myself doing that, I remind myself of what my intention is. And when I'm aimlessly scrolling, I remind myself that I'm using social media for educational purposes, not to waste time. So I'm following specific individuals to learn specific techniques. Sort of like what you're doing right now. Television. I look at television, and when I find that I'm going on one of those Netflix, I'm watching like an entire series in one night, I remind myself that there's no benefit to this. Sometimes we need that reset, and we're going to talk about that in I'm Feeling Burnt Out segment. But sometimes we need that reset, and television sometimes is that reset. But 3 hours a day, on average, is mind-numbing. What could you be doing that you're going to get a bigger return on your investment for that time? So remember that everybody has 168 hours in a day. So if you're seeing somebody that you feel like they're just crushing it and they're getting so much more done than you are and they're executing on everything, start a conversation with them. Ask them, hey, I noticed that you're getting all of this done. What are some things that you're doing on a regular basis that I can adopt so that I can start executing better? Move on to number 2. I'm so busy. There's so much going on in life. Chunk that down. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Chunk it down. I was feeling overwhelmed when YouTube channel, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have to edit. I have to write stories. I have to research content. I gotta just chunk it down. It's one piece at a time. How do you record your first YouTube video? You break out your phone. It's the easiest way of doing it. I did my first one using my laptop computer, and the audio absolutely sucked. But so what? I was taking action, and I was chunking it down into little parts. First, I'm going to record something. Then, I'm going to learn how to upload it to YouTube. Then, I can find the fine-tune things, right? I can worry about thumbnails. I can worry about titles. I can worry about content. But just taking action, and when you take action, chunk it down to the smallest steps. When you chunk it down, your mind can wrap itself around that idea. I'm so busy, there's so much to do. Institute the 80-20 rule. It's Pareto's principle. 80% of the things that you're doing aren't moving the needle. 20% of the things that you're doing are giving you 80% of the results. So find your 20%. Find those couple of things that in doing them will make everything else fall into place. So for example, going back to YouTube channels, right? If I find an editor, he then will help design the video, find the B-roll, put things together. He will either help me with the thumbnail or know people that can help me with the thumbnail. So bringing an editor on is one of the best things you can do if you're looking to really expand your channel. It's that one domino that makes a whole bunch of other dominoes fall over. What are places in life that you can operate on that 20%? What can you delegate? You have so many things to do. What can you delegate? I like divide and conquer. I like thinking about it, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is how when we have big things, right? We have web development, we have social media, we have lesson plans, we have scheduling, we have payroll. My partner and I divide those up. We divide the things that have to get done between ourselves. And then we delegate. We delegate those lesser tasks, those tasks that are kind of automatic, kind of, it's going to sound bad, but that are under my pay scale, right? I should be the face of the company. I should be sourcing deals. I should be negotiating deals. I don't need to send out direct to seller letters, right? I can delegate that to somebody. I can delegate bringing letters to the post office. I can delegate bring me 3 companies that you think are really good at direct to seller, and then I'll make the final decision. But I don't have to do that research into what companies are out there to do direct to seller. Direct to seller is how you contact property owners in real estate. So divide and conquer. What are the things that I am responsible for? What are the things that my partner is responsible for? And then out of those things that I'm responsible for, what's the 80-20? What's the 80% I can kind of delegate off? And what's the 20% that I have to really be paying attention to? Move on to number 3. I'm feeling burnt out. Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy wrote a really good book, 10X is easier than 2X. And in that book, Dan mentions that when he lays out his year, he schedules 180 days of time for himself. Now, I'm not suggesting that we take a half a year off, but I am suggesting that a couple of days a month, a week, a quarter, for us to just slow down and relax. Now, what does that look like? Sometimes it looks like completely removing yourself from the work scenario. I've done that before. Completely remove yourself from the work scenario. Skydiving, camping, fishing, things like that. Things that I'm doing just for myself. Nice long, day-long hikes. Things that I'm doing just for myself. I don't think about work. Then there's that reset that I go through that involves things like solo weekends. Solo weekends is for myself, but it's also for the business. So a solo weekend, for anybody that's not familiar with it, is essentially you go to a third location, right? It's not work, it's not home, it's the hotel down the block, an Airbnb somewhere. It doesn't have to be far, it doesn't have to be fancy. Ideally, there'd be room service, and you basically just lock yourself in that room, and you're just going to sit in quiet and peace and see what bubbles up, and then start journaling and taking notes and thinking. Just let your mind wander. And you'll get a lot of good ideas, and it'll help relax you. Bill Gates was doing this. He would go into the Pacific Northwest, into the wilderness, into a cabin somewhere, and he would spend an entire week there looking over suggestions that the people that worked for Microsoft were making. And he would look at these papers and he'd scribble notes on them, and he would come back with so refreshed and so many ideas. It's actually how he came up with one of the internet browsers. So, can you do a solo weekend? Can you? Yes, you can. I don't have enough time. Schedule it. Because if I told you right now, if you didn't go to the doctor tomorrow at 10 a.m., you would die, all of a sudden, you'd have the time to go to the doctor tomorrow at 10 a.m. Think about when you fly in an airplane. Because I'm feeling burnt out, and me telling you, well, you have to take time for yourself. You have to remove yourself from the environment and let your body calm. That's all well and good. But does it work? It absolutely works, because your mind can refocus. Your mind's not in, when you're in the thick of it and you're starting to feel burnt out, you're in the thick of fight and flight, and you're constantly tensed, and you're constantly stressed. And when you remove yourself from that environment and you start just letting thoughts bubble up, you allow your mind to realize, okay, like, I can get this stuff out. It's all right. I can look at this problem. I can do this. Think about when you fly in an airplane, the reason why you put your oxygen mask on first before you put a child's oxygen mask on. You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself and you decompose, you're the foundation of your business, you're the foundation of your life, you're the foundation of your family. If you lose it, then all of it comes crashing down. And you're saying, yes, that's the exact point. That's why I got to burn the candle at both ends. No. When you take a little bit of time for yourself and you just hit that reset button, it's amazing the opportunities, the doors that open. Things start clicking in your mind. Oh, I can get this guy. I can delegate this to Joe. I can delegate this to Pam. What happens if I do that on Tuesday mornings? It brings you clarity because you're removing yourself from the weeds. You've heard that before, right? You can't see the trees when you're on the ground. You can't see the forest when you're looking at the trees. So you have to remove yourself so that you can see the whole forest. Hitting that reset button in two ways. The first is time specifically for me. Massages, hikes, strenuous activities. For me, strenuous activities work. It allows me to just get that stress out. What are the activities for you? And then solo weekends. Solo weekends are for me. It helps me calm. It helps me hit the reset. And it also allows me to bring the business even further. What are the new innovations that we're going to have? I typically do solo weekends the end of the year when I'm assessing what happened the previous year and what I want the next year to look at. And in the middle of the year, if I feel like I need a kind of an update. So those are the ways that I deal with overwhelm. Those are the ways that you can deal with overwhelm. Taking small steps. You don't have to institute all of this. Institute just one of these techniques and see how it works for you. These are all things that I've tried in the past and they've all worked for me. They can and will work for you. Guys, around here, we live up here in the numerator, not down in the denominator. Go out there today and be unstoppable and absolutely crush your day. Have a wonderful day. I love spending time with you guys.